This was slotted as the game of the year in the preseason for the SEC, but we will see what happens as Alabama will take on Texas A&M on Saturday, 7 p.m. Central Time kickoff from Kyle Field, College Station, Texas. We're back at it again, baby. Touchdown. Alabama Magazine providing to you all the information, all the conversation on your Crimson Tide. I'm yours truly, Stephen M. Smith.
And I'm Patrick Dowd.
And all the time, people, we're giving you your updates, last up-to-the-minute updates discussing your Crimson Tide prior to kickoff against Texas A&M. And, Pat, we start things off with the next man saga again for the Crimson Tide offensively. This becomes one Jace McClellan, sophomore running back who enhances his offense in so many ways, whether it's running the ball in between the tackles, bouncing plays outside, catching passes out of the backfield. He was starting to come into that Josh Jacobs type role, but against Ole Miss, suffered a knee injury, out for the season, had surgery on Tuesday. Yes, the stings, but once again, the next man up moniker as you look at Roydell Williams and Trey Sanders, both of these two getting their big chance this week.
Yeah, next man up, but they're running out of that coming up because Kamar Wheaton's another guy that Nick Saban brought up who is going to be week to week as well. That only gives Alabama 3 scholarship running backs on its roster. There's a lot of speculation of who that emergency running back might turn into.
They're not going to tell us, though.
No, they're not going to tell us. We might find out if Alabama's up by 30 or 40 because that's the only time they'll be to get carries. But you know, this is really unfortunate for Jace because, you know, he was really coming into his own.
He was having a good year
on the ground and through the passing game, which is, I think, is the area where Alabama's going to miss him the most through the air because Bryce Young really had success in the red zone, checking down McClellan for these end zone scores.
Now, something that's cool here, Pat, is for the first time since 2004, and this was during the Mike Shula era at Alabama, the Crimson Tide will have its 1-2 punch in the backfield. Brian Robinson, Roydell Williams. In-state kids, in-state talents. Brian Robinson from Tuscaloosa, Roydell Williams from Hueytown High School in the Birmingham area. So that's going to be really fun watching that on the field. But also, like I mentioned, a big chance for Trey Sanders. People have been wondering, why is he not getting more carries, more opportunities in these football games? He's only a 5-star from the state of Florida when he came in that 2019 class. But the big thing for Trey in this game, Pat, is how engaged will he be when he does not have the football? Coach Saban knows you're a 5-star. Yeah, you can run the ball in between the tackles. You can bounce plays outside. You can be special with the ball in your hands. But how engaged will you be? Will you be out there blocking, whether it be in blocking for receivers, blocking for other running backs, handling those blitz protection pickups, giving Bryce Young more time to throw the ball? How engaged will Trey Sanders be when he does not have the ball? That's the big question.
Well, I mean, if it's a question of engagement, how engaged you're going to be, I mean, why are you on the field at all? Because
Good point.
I mean, if you're not going to be engaged, why would you even be on the field? And I'm not. Look, I don't think Trey Sanders is going to really he's not going to try to waste this opportunity because there hasn't been a lot of opportunity this season. So I'm sure that he's going to try to do the best he can the time he has.
Absolutely. So if you flip this now to the defense side of the ball here, Pat, another next man up scenario, we're looking at Drew Sanders, who another one that was coming into his own, sophomore at outside linebacker, was really starting to play against Ole Miss a week ago. 5 tackles, 2 quarterback hurries, was creating a lot of havoc back there in the backfield, but sustained a hand injury, will be out for this matchup against the Aggies. Is listed now as a game-by-game, week-by-week as the Tide continue to monitor his progress. But you've got 2 guys in Chris Braswell and Dallas Turner, 2 5-stars that Alabama has been very pleased with. They've been very happy with, especially with the progressions that both of those 2 have made. So going to be interesting to see how they play on the field, both Braswell and Dallas Turner filling in for Drew Sanders.
I mean, it's quite a first opportunity to get, especially on the road at Kyle Field in the hostile
very
environment.
Very cultic atmosphere.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal, but it's going to be much like the running back position. Alabama's kind of running out of guys to play these spots because we bring up Braswell and Dallas Turner. They're 2 guys, not a lot of experience at all. And outside linebacker is a really important position in the Alabama defense because that's where they like to generate a lot of their pressure in the pass rush as well. You have to be able to be versatile and drop into coverage. So it's going to be. I mean, I'm interested to see how Turner and Braswell play, but they're clearly running out of options there.
Now, of course, the good thing with Braswell, Pat, is he did pick up the extra 40 pounds of weight and extra 20 pounds of weight and muscle in the offseason, going from 220 to 240. So that means he'll be able to sustain more at the point of attack, especially on those run plays. But like you mentioned, not a lot of experience for either of these two, so they both have a chance in a marquee game at Kyle Field to show Coach Saban, to show the coaching staff, to show the fans, but also to show themselves how ready they are, how prepared they are for this moment. But Pat, as we now just look at Texas A&M in this matchup, in particular the A&M offense, three guys to look at, just only three guys. You've got Isaiah Spiller at running back, of whom a 1,000-yard back a season ago. He's got 3 100-yard games so far this season. Then behind him, you've got Anaya Smith, the converted running back, now wide receiver. Smith last season had a huge game against the Crimson Tide, especially on those wheel routes. He caught Dylan Moses off guard. He caught Christian Harris off guard. Smith had 6 catches, 123 yards, 1 touchdown. And then the tight end, Jalen Weidermeyer, of whom, in my opinion, this guy is a first-round pick. It's written all on him at 6'5", 265 pounds. Those will be your 3 guys to watch, but A&M at that quarterback spot, not the most fruitful position they have at this point.
No, it's definitely not. And we bring up just those 3 guys, Isaiah Spiller, Smith, and Jace Weidemeyer. I mean, they're 3 guys who really have the makeup to hurt Alabama, but you got to get these guys the football, especially in the air, and A&M has not been able to do that offensively since Haynes King went out with injury the second game of the season. Zach Calzada stepped in. He has really struggled offensively. I mean, this is an A&M offense that's 101st in the country with just 23 points per game.
Can you say that one more time, Pat?
101st in the country, only 23 points per game. That's not really in today's day and age of college football, that's not going to win you too many big games. And Calzada has really struggled with turnovers as well, 5 touchdowns, but also 4 interceptions. That's not a great ratio to have. And back-to-back games against Arkansas and Mississippi State, two pretty good SEC teams, I'd say, more so Arkansas than Mississippi State, in my opinion. But in both those games, held to under 200 yards passing. That's not going to cut it when you're facing a team like Alabama.
It's not going to cut it. So what will be interesting here, Pat, is what does Jimbo Fisher do in this situation? Do you line up Isaiah Spiller more so on the wildcat?
You got to get weird.
Do you have to have Anaya Smith take direct snaps and motion? Like, what do you have to do to generate some type of consistent offense in this game against a Crimson Tide defense that Coach Saban has said we have not had our complete game yet? And this is a team hungry for that first complete game on the defensive side of the football. We've seen a complete first quarter against Florida. We've seen complete first halves when you talk Miami and Ole Miss. But Saban still in search of, can I get relentless competitive edge from start to finish, from first quarter to fourth quarter? This is going to be kind of interesting here to see, where does Jimbo Fisher craft this offense when you have a struggling quarterback against an Alabama team hungry for that first complete game?
Yeah, I mean, they're, like I said earlier, they're going to have to get weird with Anaya Smith and Isaiah Spiller, whether it's misdirections, pop passes, bubble passes, wildcat formations, any way to get these guys the ball easily and efficiently. But, in terms of Alabama playing a full game, I would say they're pretty close, especially after last week's performance against Ole Miss.
I'm still munching on popcorn with Sprite right now.
They really probably should have only given up 14 points if not for that pass interference call.
I would say 7.
Maybe 7. I mean, still, Ole Miss was able to put together 2 pretty good drives, and they got a little bit bailed out on that pass interference call. I think Nick Saban would say the same thing privately, not publicly to his team. But, yeah, I think they're pretty close to playing a complete game on defense, and this would be a good game to demonstrate that.
Now, if we look at Alabama's offense here against A&M, of course the Aggies, they have a very good defensive run. We look at DeMarvin Leal and Michael Clemens and Jayden Peavy and more of the other guys on that front. Coach Saban mentioned on Thursday on his show, Hey Coach, that a lot of guys on A&M's front will play pro ball on Sundays in the NFL. But at the same time, I feel like this is a big game for Bryce Young. This is a big game for the running backs also, and I know, Pat, you're going to explain that. But this is a huge game for Bryce Young because last week, yes, he took the lead in the Heisman conversation, but more so by default. It wasn't just an overwhelmingly big performance. He had some strong numbers, 240 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. But I look at this week against the Aggies, he has a chance to go out here and put up maybe a 4 to 5 touchdown performance that will have the masses go, okay, Young is the unquestioned number 1 guy in the clubhouse. I want to see Young go out there and have a big game, but also this is a huge game for John Mechie. He's been kind of quiet, and some of that is geared toward how defensive secondaries have played him in coverage, but also some of that has been geared toward, Mechie got to be able to create that separation off the top of the route when he's running and trying to get free and get open. And going back to last year, it was the A&M game that started Mechie off. 5 catches, 181 yards, 2 touchdowns, a career day. So I want to see big game from Bryce, but more from John Mechie and trying to break out of that quietness a little bit.
Yeah, I think everyone wants to point to having some sort of Heisman moment, especially when we talk about someone like Bryce Young, who's absolutely in the conversation. And I mean, last week it just wasn't in the cards because it just wasn't the game plan for him to throw for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Right, because Ole Miss rushed 3 and dropped 8.
Yeah, when you drop 8, you run the football and, just control the clock and keep that offense off the field, and he executed it very well. Like, Bryce Young had a good game last week. I know everyone wants to point to the interception and whatnot, but, I mean, he played pretty well for what the game plan asked of him. And, I mean, this week, I don't know. I mean, I know we want to see John Mechie put up these big numbers, and same thing with Bryce Young, but it might not be in the cards. It may be a similar game plan to a week ago where Alabama's run focused with Brian Robinson, because Texas A&M has really struggled in stopping the run this year. They've given up 226 rushing yards to Kent State, 171 to Colorado, most recently 202 to Arkansas. So, I mean, they've really had their struggles on the ground. It may be a similar kind of game plan, but even then, if they run the ball effectively, they'll be able to open up to the pass game.
So, Pat, are you telling me we could have a situation where Bama would have 2 100-yard backs against A&M? Are you telling me this right now?
No. I mean, they may not have 2 100-yard backs, but as long as they control the clock, I mean, I'm not going to say Brian, because then all of a sudden we're putting that, Brian Robinson got top his performance against Ole Miss. No, he just got to be running the ball effectively and control the clock, put up points.
Absolutely. So, I remember on Thursday, Coach Saban talked about this matchup against A&M potentially being a trap game. Do you kind of feel that, Pat? Because I know Vegas has this game 17.5. This game prior to the season was looked at as the SEC game of the year. So many people were pumping it up, especially after last season. A&M only 1 loss. That was against Alabama. They felt like we should have been in the college football playoff last year. Of course, that didn't happen despite all the lobbying coming from Jimbo Fisher. But do you feel like after 2 losses, they feel like a wounded animal, that they caught some bad breaks in those 2 games? Do you sense kind of a trap-ish feeling where this game is concerned for Alabama?
I mean, it has the makeup for a trap game, and it's going to be if Alabama allows it to be a trap game, because like we all know, A&M has a lot of talent on this team. There are a number of NFL players on this roster, and if there's ever a time to slip up during the season, it may be in SEC play, because that's just where the most talent is. But I mean, it's pretty back-to-back brutal losses for Texas A&M, especially to Mississippi State, when they actually, I mean, I know it's not a run-focused team. They were able to hold them to 30 yards, but they let up 408 passing yards. I know that's their style of offense, but when you just see numbers like that and then followed by the 200 yards rushing given up to Arkansas, it's like the defense's mindset is, can we do anything right? So I don't really know if A&M will be able to really keep this to a close game. I think Alabama will cover on the road in the hostile environment. I think the Florida game early on in the year was a really good learning experience, especially for the young guys on this team to really play and handle the hostile environments. I think it was a big game for Bill O'Brien, too, to learn how to mix up the cadences on the offense to play as efficiently as possible.
I'm going to say this, Pat. So, Coach Saban is 4-0 as Alabama's head football coach in going to Kyle Field. 4-0 all time. 3 of those 4 games, you look at 2013, you look at 2015, you look at 2019, Alabama put up 40-plus points in all 3 of those matchups at Kyle Field. The only game where it did not have the 40-point magic was 2017, I believe, and the final score of that one was 27-19. So, more times than not, when they've gone to Kyle Field, Alabama's offense has put up 40-plus on the Aggies, so we'll see how this kind of ties in here. But here's the fun question of the day. If you're trying to see an emergency running back for Alabama, who would be the guy you would have your poker chip stacked to, Pat?
Well, there's a couple realistic options. I mean, Christian Leary, JoJo Earl, some guy change of space guys. But we talked about it earlier. You mentioned a name. I want to see Kendrick Blackshear run back there.
Are you serious?
We saw him run on kickoff.
Hold on. You want to see the love child of Reuben Foster and Matt Wilson and running back?
I don't know if I'd put it like, I don't know if I'd describe him like that. But I mean, we all saw how hard he ran on kickoff.
I mean, he went hard on that kickoff, though. I mean, he hit that dude, though.
I mean, put the football in his hands. Alabama might have two 100-yard rushers against A&M.
Okay, so you're going to go Kendrick Blackshear. I know the people are going to be kicking off that one. Me, I'm going to go with Christian Story. Christian Story at 6'1", 215 pounds. Our own Justin Smith at TDA, leading scouting and recruiting analyst. He actually covered a lot of Story out of Lynette High School in the 2020 recruiting cycle. Story played running back in the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game. He played quarterback in high school, so he's been able to run, be elusive, do different things with that size at 6'1", 215. That's really good size, really compact size as a running back. But Kendrick Blackshear would not mind seeing the man drinking Kool-Aid out of a mason jar, eating that stimulant fried chicken and collard greens, getting that chance there at running back at 6'2", 240 pounds out Duncanville, Texas. Pat, if that happens and he ends up going off, I owe you a steak.
All right.
I will owe you a steak dinner. If I see Kendrick Blackshear getting carries, I will owe you a steak dinner at your place of choosing, of course. But you've already mentioned you see Alabama covering the 17.5. I think Alabama covers it also just due to I think this is the week that full complete game comes in the picture. I also think this is the week where Brian Robinson continues to build on the performance he had a week ago. I see big things from Roydell Williams and Trey Sanders getting mixed in there. But I also see a nice performance from Bryce Young. Maybe not a 400-yard game, but somewhere in between 275, 300 passing yards, 3 to 4 touchdowns. Still see a nice game there from Bryce Young. So we will definitely check out that environment there at Kyle Field.
And look, I mean, especially when you're at a program, the number one team in the country like Alabama, as long as you continue to win games and convincingly, your best player is going to be in the Heisman conversation.
I mean,
That's just how it works.
Absolutely. But people, Saturday, Alabama, Texas A&M, 7:00 p.m. Central Time kickoff from College Station, Texas. Kyle Field, CBS will have the call on the matchup. For all of us here at Touchdown Alabama Magazine, I'm your man Stephen M. Smith.
And I'm Patrick Dowd.
And we'll rock and roll with you next week.